You mentioned this earlier, but what more can you tell us about how the West and the United States and other international organizations are reacting to the results, I should say that in air quotes, out of Sierra Leone?
Well, they've just classified the elections as non-transparent elections, but we are saying that it goes way beyond just the question of transparency, that the Electoral Commission organizing the elections in a secret fashion or not allowing people access to monitor the elections. It deals with a range of irregularities and illegalities where the elections were not conducted following the public elections laws. So an election does not conform to the rules and regulations that we have in that country for the conduct of elections. It's basically an illegal arrangement. So any government that results from the illegal conduct of elections is an illegal regime. So it has to be called that way. But when you just describe the situation as non-transparent, it is an ambiguous way of basically, it opens the discussion to conceptual issues rather than the actual crime that has been committed. But it's so unfortunate because on June 30th, the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation approved $150 million loan to the Suma Group, which is a private company that's in charge of running the national airport in Sierra Leone. And that airport was built by that company through a contract awarded to them by the current government and the parliament without proper scrutiny and without citizens being aware of the details of that agreement. So such kinds of funding that goes to fund projects and programs undertaken by the government of Sierra Leone, by the United States and Europe, even as we speak of these kinds of illegalities and discrepancies in voting processes and the way the country is being run, emboldens dictators and leaders like the current president of Sierra Leone, who is openly stealing votes. So we have, a year ago, we have, in the African Express, we've published the fact that the current government cannot win a free and fair election based on the objective conditions on the ground. The desperate economic situation, the economic crisis, coupled with the dictatorial tendencies of the government, the authoritarian nature of how they've run the government corruption that we've reported about. So we knew that the only way the government is going to retain power is by rigging the elections. And we have also pointed in advance that they cannot rig the elections without the complicity of the opposition parties on the ground, and which is why we have been calling for effective international monitoring of the elections. And it ended up into a situation where the politicians ganged up to steal the popular mandate of the people in front of the whole world. So we believe such kinds of governments cannot be funded. The US and their European partners cannot continue to give taxpayers money to politicians who steal elections, because any individual who steals a national election cannot be trusted with the management of a national economy, let alone being awarded loans and grants, more debts from international organizations like the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation. So the U.S. has to hold itself accountable to its own standards of governance that it claims to promote around the world, which is that's the message we want to call. We expect them to be able to impress upon their partners around the world, including the government of Sierra Leone, the need to maintain human rights, the need to respect the freedoms of its own citizens. And not only that, to impress upon them the minimum standards of good governance and accountability. So when they give loans like the current credit that they've approved for the funding and expansion of the Sierra Leone airport, it emboldens leaders like Julius Maada Bio, who has hijacked the mandate of the people, and they've transformed the country into a colony of gangsters.
And two final questions for you. As a socialist, you've been critical of both of these parties. I remember you were hopeful that the elections might lead to some pathway toward the end of your exile. You're currently joining us, from Chicago rather than Sierra Leone because of the work that you've done uncovering corruption in Sierra Leone. So I'm curious, one, what do you think these election results mean for you personally? But then also, two, what do they mean for the long-term future of Sierra Leone if people decide that democracy is just a facade, that there's no point in participating in it? Are they going to seek channels outside of electoralism that could lead toward violence and other ways of enacting policy change, or that there clearly is demand for.
Yes, the entire West African region is prone to conflict. If you look around West Africa now, you have crisis and political conflict in Guinea-Conakry as a result of rigged elections. We look at the unstable situation in Nigeria, and we have elections coming up in Liberia. So Ivory Coast was recently faced with the same kind of political crisis. We have Mali, and the entire region is in conflagration. We have the same kind of issues they were dealing with in Senegal not too long, a few weeks ago, where masses of young people were out on the street demanding for more accountable leadership and effective participation. So what these kinds of situations, when you have regular citizens, men and women, who are living on trading fruits and vegetables, that the totality of which is not more than $5, living that and then standing on queues for the rest of the day, and trying to see if the ballot box can serve as an instrument to make their voices heard, are denied that opportunity, then you're opening up the space for other kinds of possibilities. People might think of other ways to actualize their own citizenship. And we must remember the fact that Sierra Leone, not too long ago, that entire region, Liberia and Sierra Leone, were in conflict. We entered into civil war for 10 years because we had a dictatorial one-party state that was there from 1970s right up to the 1990s. By 1991, we had a conflict that ended in 2001. And we are hoping that we cannot have the same groups of organizations that led the country to war, programming the country into the pathway to more conflict and the possibility of crisis. So that's what we've been warning against. Personally, I've been affected by that situation because I am currently unable to go back home for doing nothing other than just highlighting and advocating that governments must be transparent. Leaders should be held accountable to the basic principles of governance and transparency, and we cannot have a handful of people, less than 1% of the population, holding on to the state and using it as a basis of personal aggrandizement instead of providing basic economic and social services for the rest of the population. As we speak now, major parts of Sierra Leone lack electricity supply. More than 90% of the country's population do not have the basic conditions of human existence. Absence of adequate housing facilities, healthcare is a problem, education is a challenge. Some of the worst statistics when it comes to infant and maternal mortality rates, these conditions are the result of corruption, of mismanagement that has been ongoing with impunity by the politicians of the two dominant factions. And we were hoping that at this time, these elections that just got rigged openly in front of the whole world would have empowered citizens with the belief and the faith that at least the ballot box can answer to their own problems, can serve as a check to these kinds of politics of a banditry that we have experienced for the last 60 years. But unfortunately, while these politicians are looting public funds, they openly ganged up to loot the votes of citizens. People, they just announce results without properly counting the votes. It cannot get worse than that.
All right. Well, Cherno Bah, thank you so much for your reporting, and thanks for joining us on the show. Cherno is an editor of Africanist Press. Thanks again for joining us. And that'll do it for us today. Thanks, everybody, for watching Counterpoints.
Absolutely, Ryan. It was great to have you back.
Good to be back, and we'll see you next week.